My beloved child, before you continue with your day, pause for just a moment. Do not rush past these words, because something has quietly led you here that cannot be explained by coincidence alone. There are moments when heaven gently whispers, and there are moments when heaven speaks with such unmistakable clarity that even the busiest heart suddenly becomes still. This is one of those moments. If your spirit has felt restless lately, if your heart has carried questions you have never spoken aloud, if you have sensed that someone, somewhere, has been thinking about you without your knowledge, then stay with this message until the very end. What you are about to hear is not meant to create fear. It is meant to awaken hope. There is something waiting for you beyond the next few moments, and every sentence is preparing your heart to receive it. You have wondered why certain memories return without warning. Why a familiar face appears in your thoughts during ordinary moments. Why songs suddenly remind you of someone you have never fully known, yet somehow feel connected to. You dismissed these moments as imagination, but heaven noticed every one of them. While you believed your heart was wandering without direction, I was quietly arranging pieces that neither time nor distance could erase. What feels random to you has never been random to me. Every delay, every unanswered question, every silent season has been carrying a purpose too deep for your eyes to recognize. Even now, as these words unfold before you, there are unseen movements surrounding your story. Listen carefully, my child, because what I reveal next has been hidden beneath ordinary moments. There is someone whose heart has carried your name in silence. They have spoken about you when no one else could hear. They have questioned why their thoughts continued returning to someone they could not fully understand. They tried convincing themselves that it was only curiosity. Then they believed it was coincidence. Later they called it impossible. Yet every attempt to ignore the connection only made it stronger. What they could not understand was that some connections are not created by human effort. They are quietly protected until the appointed moment arrives. There was a night not long ago when the world around them became unusually quiet. The distractions faded. The noise disappeared. For the first time in many days, they allowed themselves to sit alone with their own thoughts. That silence became louder than any conversation they had experienced. In that silence, your memory unexpectedly appeared before them. It was not forced. It was not invited. It simply arrived. They remembered details they thought they had forgotten. Small moments became meaningful. Words once ignored suddenly carried weight. Questions they had buried began demanding answers. They asked themselves why your presence continued returning to their heart. They searched for logical explanations, yet every answer felt incomplete. Their mind attempted to move forward, but something much deeper refused to let go. There was an invisible thread connecting places neither of you could see. It stretched beyond distance. Beyond uncertainty. Beyond everything the human mind considers possible. Even they could not explain why the thought of you brought both peace and overwhelming emotion at the same time. You may wonder why I am telling you this now instead of earlier. The answer is simple. Your heart was not ready before this moment. Had these words reached you during another season, doubt would have replaced faith. Fear would have overshadowed hope. Impatience would have stolen the beauty of what was still being prepared. But today your spirit carries a different kind of readiness. You have walked through disappointments that quietly strengthened your faith without you realizing it. You survived days you believed would break you forever. You continued moving even when answers never arrived. Every silent battle shaped your heart for this very message. There is another detail you have not yet seen. During that same quiet evening, something unexpected happened. Your soulmate found themselves looking at an old conversation, not because they planned to, but because something gently drew their attention back. They scrolled through words that once seemed ordinary. Suddenly those words felt completely different. Every sentence carried emotion they had overlooked before. Every pause between messages now spoke louder than the messages themselves. Their heart began asking questions their mind could no longer silence. For a long time they resisted those emotions. Pride stood in the way. Fear whispered that reaching out might change everything forever. Uncertainty convinced them that remaining silent was safer than risking vulnerability. Yet silence became heavier each passing day. There comes a moment when unspoken feelings become impossible to carry. They begin pressing against the heart until honesty becomes the only path left. That moment quietly arrived. Do not misunderstand what I am revealing. This is not merely about romance. This is about transformation. The message they left behind was never simply a collection of words. It became a mirror reflecting everything they had hidden from themselves. Before they could understand you, they first had to confront parts of themselves they spent years avoiding. That journey was painful. It required humility. It demanded honesty. But growth often begins where comfort ends. You have also been changing without fully realizing it. The person reading these words today is not the same person who cried through previous nights. You have learned compassion through disappointment. You have learned patience through waiting. You have learned strength through loneliness. Those lessons were not punishments. They were preparations. Every tear carried hidden wisdom. Every unanswered prayer quietly redirected your path toward something greater than immediate satisfaction. There were moments when you questioned whether anyone truly understood your heart. You smiled while carrying invisible burdens. You encouraged others while secretly needing encouragement yourself. You kept moving forward because stopping felt impossible. I watched every silent sacrifice. I counted every hidden tear. Nothing escaped my attention. Even when you believed heaven was silent, my hands were still working behind scenes your eyes could never reach. Now listen closely, because the next part of this story becomes even more extraordinary. Your soulmate did something they never expected themselves to do. They began writing words they never intended anyone else to read. It started as a simple attempt to organize confused thoughts. One sentence became another. Then another. Soon an entire message existed before them. They stared at those words for a long time. Some sentences made them smile. Others brought unexpected emotion. There were moments when they almost erased everything. Their finger hovered above the screen more than once. They told themselves it was foolish. They convinced themselves nobody needed to know how they truly felt. Yet every attempt to delete those words somehow failed. Something inside refused to let them disappear. Have you ever wondered why certain thoughts refuse to leave your heart? Why certain names continue returning despite your efforts to forget? It is because not every feeling is meant to be buried. Some feelings are invitations. Some memories are gentle reminders that your story has not yet reached its final chapter. The message remained. Not because they lacked courage to erase it. Because something greater than fear continued protecting it. As they reread every sentence, they noticed something remarkable. The message was changing them while they wrote it. The honesty they poured into those words became healing they never expected. Every confession removed another layer of emotional weight. Every truthful sentence freed another piece of their heart. Without realizing it, the message stopped being about you alone. It became about becoming the person they were always meant to become. Meanwhile, you experienced unusual moments yourself. Perhaps you noticed your intuition becoming stronger. Perhaps certain dreams felt unusually vivid. Perhaps you woke up with unexplained peace after weeks of emotional exhaustion. These were not meaningless experiences. Sometimes I prepare two hearts simultaneously without either one understanding why. While one heart learns courage, the other learns patience. While one discovers honesty, the other discovers trust. Different lessons. One destination. There is something else you have not noticed. During recent days, invisible doors quietly began opening around your future. Conversations you believed impossible are slowly becoming possible. Circumstances once frozen are beginning to move. Hearts once guarded are becoming softer. Timelines you thought had ended are quietly being rewritten beyond your sight. This is why I ask you not to surrender to discouragement. Not yet. There are chapters you have not read. Answers you have not heard. Conversations you have not imagined. And among them is one that carries greater significance than you currently understand. The message your soulmate left behind was never ordinary. It contained words they struggled to admit even to themselves. Words shaped by regret. Words softened by hope. Words carried by sincerity instead of impulse. Words that revealed what silence had hidden for far too long. But there is one sentence inside that message. One sentence so deeply personal. One sentence capable of changing how you understand everything that has happened between you. They almost removed that single sentence more times than they could count. Their heart raced every time they looked at it. Their hands trembled. Their breathing slowed. Because once those words existed, nothing could ever return to the way it had been before. And that single sentence, the one heaven has waited for the right moment to reveal, is about to change everything. But not yet. The silence that followed was not empty, my beloved child. It was the kind of silence that exists just before the sunrise breaks through the horizon. The kind of silence that makes the heart beat a little faster because it senses something extraordinary is about to happen. If you are still listening, remain with me for a little longer. Do not leave now, because what has been hidden until this very moment is far more significant than you imagined. The message your soulmate left behind was never meant to be discovered by accident. Every delay, every unanswered question, every season of waiting has quietly been leading to this revelation. As they stared at the screen, the room around them seemed to disappear. The ordinary sounds of life faded into the background. Time itself felt slower. Their eyes remained fixed on a single paragraph they had rewritten over and over again. They changed the wording. They shortened it. They tried making it sound less emotional. Then they deleted everything and began again. Yet no matter how many versions they created, the truth refused to change. Their heart already knew what their mind was still trying to avoid. They whispered to themselves, "If these words ever reach them, nothing inside me will remain hidden." That realization frightened them. Not because love is frightening, but because honesty always asks us to become vulnerable before it gives us peace. For so long they believed protecting their heart meant remaining silent. They convinced themselves that distance would erase emotion. They filled their days with distractions. They smiled in front of others while carrying questions they never answered. They laughed during conversations that secretly reminded them of you. Every attempt to move on only brought them back to the same place, your memory. Then something happened that neither of you could have predicted. On what seemed like an ordinary day, they encountered a stranger. It lasted only a few moments. The stranger spoke about destiny without realizing the impact those simple words would have. Sometimes, the stranger said with a gentle smile, the people who remain in your heart the longest are not there by accident. The conversation ended almost immediately. Yet those words echoed inside them long after the stranger disappeared. That night they could not sleep. Hours passed. The moon crossed the sky while their thoughts became louder than ever before. They reached for their phone. Not to scroll. Not to distract themselves. They opened the message again. This time they stopped trying to rewrite it. Instead, they began reading every sentence aloud. With each word their voice became quieter. Until tears unexpectedly filled their eyes. They were not crying because of sadness. They were crying because pretending had become impossible. For the first time, they admitted something they had hidden from everyone, even themselves. My heart never truly left. Those 5 words changed everything. Not because someone else heard them, but because they finally heard themselves speak the truth. My child, many people believe miracles always arrive through dramatic events. Yet some of the greatest miracles begin with a single honest sentence spoken in complete solitude. Heaven celebrates those moments because truth always opens doors that fear keeps locked. While this was happening, I was quietly preparing your heart as well. Do you remember the recent days when you suddenly felt an unexplainable calm? Moments when your anxiety eased without reason? Times when hope returned even though nothing around you had changed? Those moments were not accidents. They were gentle reminders that I was already moving before you could see the evidence. You believed you were waiting alone. You were never alone. Every prayer you whispered reached me. Every tear you hid from others was seen. Every lonely night became another page in a story I was still writing. Then came the moment your soulmate feared more than any other. Their finger hovered above the send button. Seconds felt like hours. Their heartbeat became louder. Questions flooded their mind. What if it's too late? What if they never forgive me? What if they don't believe these words? Fear offered one final chance to retreat. But something stronger than fear quietly answered. If love is real, it deserves honesty. So instead of deleting the message, they added one final paragraph. Not because it was planned. Because the heart can only hide its deepest truth for so long. That final paragraph began with a confession they never imagined writing. I tried to forget you. They stopped typing. Closed their eyes. Took a slow breath. Then continued. But every road I followed somehow brought me back to the person I kept pretending I no longer needed. Those words remained on the screen. Unedited. Raw. Completely honest. As they stared at them, something shifted inside their soul. The weight they had carried for so long suddenly felt lighter. Not because every problem had disappeared, but because truth had finally replaced denial. Yet, my beloved child, that was still not the most extraordinary part. Something happened immediately afterward that neither logic nor coincidence could fully explain. Just as they placed the phone beside them, a memory they had forgotten years ago suddenly returned with crystal clarity. It was not an ordinary memory. It was a moment connected to you. A detail so small that most people would never remember it. Yet in that instant every emotion attached to that memory came rushing back with overwhelming force. They smiled. Then they cried again. Then they whispered your name so softly that only heaven heard it. At that exact moment, without knowing why, you felt something too. Perhaps you paused in the middle of your work. Perhaps you looked out of a window for no reason. Perhaps your heart suddenly became still. You thought it was random. It wasn't. Sometimes two hearts can experience the same invisible wave without understanding where it came from. Not because they control each other, but because heaven knows exactly when each soul is ready to receive a quiet reminder that their story is still unfolding. This is why I ask you not to let disappointment convince you that nothing is changing. There are conversations taking place beyond your sight. There are prayers being answered before your eyes recognize the answer. There are doors unlocking while you still believe they remain closed. And there is something inside that message. Something your soulmate almost erased forever. One paragraph. One confession. One promise. It was written at nearly 3 o'clock in the morning when exhaustion had stripped away every mask. Those words did not come from careful planning. They came directly from the deepest place inside their heart. After writing them, they stared at the screen in complete silence. Then they whispered, "If these words ever reach them, they'll finally know why I could never let go. My beloved child." That hidden paragraph contains the answer to questions you have carried much longer than you realize. It explains every silence. every strange feeling, every moment that seemed meaningless. And when those words are finally revealed, you will understand why heaven never allowed this story to end when everyone else believed it already had. But the final paragraph, the one they protected more than anything else, the one they almost deleted forever, has not been revealed yet. And what it says will change everything.